I read an interesting article the other day about information fatigue and a growing number of us suffering from mental bandwidth depletion. There's just too much information out there. You read one blog, then another one, and pretty soon you're confused as to what you should or shouldn't be doing. It's tough out there. That's why myself and the Practice of the Practice team have created a free 28-step private practice checklist for people who want to start their own practice, whether it's a side gig or a full-time job. This free checklist will help you go from 0 to 40K quickly with video walkthroughs and paced out emails. Also, useful steps for retaining clients and finding new ones. The best thing is it's no nonsense. It's no frills. It's just everything you need to start seeing clients. Download it for free today by going to practiceofthepractice.com/new. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/new. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, bonus episode. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I am so excited that you are hanging out with me today. We are talking all things private practice, from starting one at the very beginning, growing into a group, rocking out a group, and so much more. In fact, starting in December, we're taking applications for our brand new 7-figure practice club. So for 7-figure practices, that's going to be coming out. We'll be giving you that URL in December if you want to apply for that. So if you are making over $1 million a year, you're going to want to be a part of that. You're going to want to get excited in that first group of this. It's going to be limited to only 12 people. We already have 20 people that have reached out to us from just hearing us talk about it. So we're going to really look through, what's going to be an awesome cohort of 12 people in the 7-figure practice club, where we're meeting twice a month, digging in deep together, meeting twice a year in person, so that you have those relationships with people that are really playing at a different level. Being around people that are playing at the level that you want to be or that you already are. So it's going to be a really important and fun group that we're taking applications throughout December and January. So listen for that here on the podcast, and we will be releasing that URL on December 1st. Also, when I think about my early days of entrepreneurship, I had a lot of mindset shifts I needed to make. Going to graduate school, it was always, work hard and someone's going to hire you. If you get good grades and, you do this research and you do this and that, maybe even get your PhD, then you're going to eventually get a job at a university or eventually get hired for a top position at community mental health. Never for me was it really pushed how a private practice could really help you. And then I just started listening to podcasts, started listening to Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income, John Lee Dumas, Chris Ducker. He used to have the Virtual Freedom podcast that he switched to Upreneur. Those guys were some of my kind of original virtual mentors. And, now having been on all of their shows and had them on my shows, to just see how those original teachers helped me think completely differently, to think about outsourcing, to think about scaling, to think about practice of the practice as a way to share what I'm learning and to grow beyond just that sitting in a chair doing counseling. And now we're, I think we're 11 years into Practice of the Practice. We're 10 years into the podcast. We're going to hit episode 1000 in mid 2024. But a lot of that started with virtual assistants, with scaling outside of my own time, with saying, why am I doing this when I could hire someone at a much different rate to really expand differently? And that is why I'm so excited to have Joe Rare with me today. Joe is an underground serial entrepreneur, investor, outsourcing expert, father, and husband. He currently owns 4 digital companies, 5 wedding venues, and real estate investment properties. Joe focuses on helping small to medium-sized businesses around the world while working from the comfort of his home in Montana and enjoying big sky country with his family. All of his companies are fully being run by his virtual assistants. Joe, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, well, let's just start. Before we started rolling, I had just mentioned I had just been out to Montana, and I was mentioning that Glacier was one of, if not the most beautiful national park I had been to, and that, during 2020 and 2021, took my family and lived in a camper. And then you just said, well, that's how we ended up in Montana. So I want to hear that story first before we dive into all this virtual assistant stuff.
Yeah. So, my wife was a hairstylist. We were living in Northern California at the time. I'm a digital kind of nomad. I could work from anywhere. So when her salons got shut down multiple times, and finally we were just like, let's just get in our trailer and go check things out and go see if there's somewhere else we'd like to be. And so we checked out a few states, and we were in Idaho, and I just said, hey, let's go on up to Montana. Let me show you. I've always wanted to live there. And so we went, and we were spending some time there in July of, I believe it was 2020. And she says, "Yeah, I could live here." And I said, "Well, it's July, so let me show you winter." And we came back in the fall, we came back in the winter, came back in the spring, and she was still on board. We put an offer in on the house in the spring and moved here in the summer. And so it was, it took us a while to find a house, but all in all, that's how we ended up here.
Oh, that's so awesome. How do you so when you think about being a digital nomad, how do you think through that as a father and kids and connections to community and all of that?
Well, I mean, we still believe in having home base, and so we've built really good connections here locally. Our kids are, thankfully they have the ability to be homeschooled. So the great thing is that we could pack up and go anytime we want. We can go visit family. We can take the kids and decide that we're going to go spend a week and visit their grandparents. And it doesn't change anything. And because I just need a laptop, we can do anything anywhere. And now thankfully my wife doesn't, chose not to go back to work. Well, I say that, but we opened a salon here, and she takes a few clients, just some friends that we have. But we do have really a great home base here. We're really involved in the community. My kids play sports here. They're involved in activities and 4-H and animals and all that stuff. So, I mean, we're doing the whole Montana thing with the ability to pick up and go anytime we want.
Mm, so awesome. Well, so tell me a little bit about virtual assistant world. And I want to look through the lens of our practice of the practice listeners. So we have people that, they've been trained just like I was to work for somebody else oftentimes. We don't have a lot of business training. We're highly skilled in, say trauma or couples work or ADHD, all these mental health things. And then we find ourselves in private practice, and oftentimes it's unexpectedly growing. We're wearing a million hats. We're answering phones. We're answering email. And then, really, when it comes to virtual assistants, the average therapist thinks, well, I could have somebody, I guess, check my email or answer phones or maybe do a little SEO. But you've run companies and own companies that are primarily, if not completely, run by virtual assistants. And so I would love for us first to just hear how you do that, even if it maybe doesn't directly apply to our practices to the practice listeners, but also would love to then start to say, well, here are the opportunities or ways of thinking about business differently with this skill set, and really dig into, well, here's what that could look like outside of your practice or inside your practice. So let's just start with, what does it look like to have a company that is completely or near completely run by virtual assistants?
It's not that much different than being run by somebody that's sitting next to you in your office. It's the idea starts with your mindset. What do you believe is possible? Can you operate a business with somebody else running it? And so, kind of one of the jokes that we always have with business owners that have a hard time delegating and getting things off their plate is, I joke and I say, well, you don't have a business until you can leave it. Because if
Mm,
you can't leave it, that's a job and it requires you. And so that's a really, really tough line. And it's kind of some tough love. And not a lot of people like to hear it, but that's my belief around it. I want freedom. And that's really what hooked me into the virtual assistant world. Hiring virtual assistants. I hired my first virtual assistant in November of 2008, and I've had at least one every day since, if not an entire team. We've built multiple companies. We failed a few companies. And today the reality is that I only get involved in things that fit around my lifestyle. So I
mm,
moved to Montana so that we could live the Montana lifestyle. So horseback riding and snowmobiling and hiking and off-roading and all that stuff that we love to do. If I don't have the freedom to do that, then whatever it is that I'm involved in isn't working. I need to be able to remove myself. And so that is my number one focus is lifestyle first. The business needs to operate around that ideal lifestyle. And so for, people that are, a little more hands-on in their business, look at every other thing that takes your time that does not generate income for you and see if you can hand it to somebody else. And that would be the first place I'd have people just take a look. Where could you possibly just get something off your plate that does not make you money? And then you can start to take bits and pieces and build, processes and so forth to offload more. But that's where I would tell people to start.
Yeah. So take us through some of your businesses so we have an idea of the scope. So, I mean, I'm thinking, so you have wedding venues, you've got like vacation rentals or some sort of real estate properties, and then other businesses. Walk us through a couple of those. We don't have to go super deep, but just I want to kind of understand because like I have vacation rentals. I, invest, heavily in, stock market and things like that, and also look at rental properties. And I'm always thinking through how do I automate that sort of thing even more. And then even with practice the practice, we have a virtual team of 10 in South Africa and 5 in the US. How do you like, what are you doing in those businesses? And then give us some examples of maybe virtual assistants that are doing things that the average person wouldn't even think to have a VA do things for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that drives people crazy is they go, well, how do you trust VAs? And it's like, well, how do you trust anybody? Well, you
Right.
put, you put things in place to hopefully safeguard as much as you can. And then they have to earn your trust. And so it's no different. The only difference is the mindset. Can a virtual assistant do the same thing somebody else can do? And the reality is very oftentimes, yes. So as an example, I always like to share with people, my lead developer in my company has a master's degree and he's a professor at the university. I'm a college dropout. This guy
Mm.
is way more qualified than I am on a lot of things. And that is the caliber that you have the opportunity to get at a fraction of the cost. And so I want people to understand that that is a possibility to start. The next thing is, what areas of your business do you not physically need to do things? So you can go down the marketing realm. That's probably the most common that most people think about virtual assistants for is general administration plus marketing. So everything from posting social media content, maintaining your website, if you're running some sort of a promotion, if you're running any advertising, which, private practices, possibly running some advertising, you can start out anything in the marketing world. There are millions of virtual assistants ready to do exactly those tasks. Everything, as far as administration goes, again, if you need a database managed, that's a very common practice. If you need inbound calls answered, that's another one. In my business, we have everything from, I mean, literally everything, but we have an HR division, we have a finance team. So payroll, as an example, is a huge one. We've got a very, very large team of people who, hundreds and hundreds of VAs who work with hundreds and hundreds of clients. And all of that payroll, which actually is happening today, is all run by virtual assistants. They have access to do wire transfers out of my checking account to make sure that they can pay payroll. They can literally run almost every single aspect that does not require physical presence. So as long as somebody doesn't need to stand next to you, a virtual assistant can do it. And that's a huge, huge mind shift for most people. So everything from marketing and admin and, payroll, and we have actually, part of our legal team. We have bookkeepers who handle that kind of stuff. Our recruiting team, as far as hiring goes, whether we're hiring somebody local or if we're still, outsourcing overseas, because we do have a very few people local. Our sales team is all based in the Philippines, except one sales manager. Customer success or client success, managing clients, making sure that they're happy, they're getting results. Everybody who builds all our data sets, name it. And unless they have to stand next to you to fulfill it, it can be run by a virtual assistant.
Now, how do you help people think through whether they should go individually find an individual virtual assistant? So whether that's through Upwork or other search engines out there around finding VAs versus working with a company, because I see value with both of them. When you do it individually, sometimes you can get somebody cheaper. You can really train them in your own way. You may even be able to outsource that person to other people once you've trained them. But then if you go with a company, if that one person leaves, they usually have 5, 10, 100 other people that can just fill in and there's no disruption. So how do you think through, or how do you think our listeners should think through individually finding someone versus working with companies to outsource things to?
Well, I'm a little partial because I own a company. So I'm a little
Yes.
partial to that. However, with that said, the reason that I'm so partial to it is just the fact that I've done it the other way. And we still do it the other way. We go hire people direct, and we still have to go through all of the same things. Right now, we're about 109 applications to one hire. So
Whoa.
think about that. And our standards are pretty high. So we don't let everybody in. But that's, there's a lot of applications that come through that have to be managed. They have to be reviewed. From there, anybody who passes just that first, kind of visibility check, then we go from there, and there's, layers and layers of background checks and criminal background checks. And, if it's a developing nation, like, our team is primarily in the Philippines, we're looking at, what's your power like, what's your internet speed, do you have backup power, do you have backup internet? All of these things matter. Then now you can at least understand that this person can actually do something, but can they do what you're trying to hire them to do? Well, we go through and we test them. So if somebody says like, hey, I'm a graphic designer, or hey, I do administrative tasks and I'm really good with database management, and I'm really good with, front desk type, work that's remote, we actually test them. And so we don't just let somebody hire them, we literally test them. And they have to be able to execute what they say. One thing that we started over the past year that's been very successful that we do is we have just a process in our recruiting and our placements where if a virtual assistant gets hired, they get trained on whatever it is, the skill set that they need to be trained on. We ensure that they can do the work. We ensure that they can actually execute the projects and the tasks and things that they're going to be responsible for in their role. But then they have to be able to teach it. And if they can't teach somebody else, then they don't understand it. And so for us, execution is one thing. Being able to teach somebody else is another thing. Because how do you grow and how do you scale? One person has to teach the next and so forth. And you create your ladder. And so that has been very important to us over the past year. And it's been very, very successful in our processes. So the question comes down to, does a business want to do that? And if they do, and they don't mind going through the applications, they don't mind all those things, then go for it and find somebody on your own. If you want somebody who's already done it for you, you may have a little bit higher cost, like we're a little bit higher priced, but we're going to do all the back end stuff for you.
Yeah. Now, I don't remember who I heard it from, but I heard once that for kind of every hour you save in what you're doing, it usually takes at least 7 hours to teach that. Do you have a ratio if someone is hiring their own VA as to about how long it takes for them to be onboarded for, say if they're saving you 10 hours a week, would you say it's going to probably take 70 hours of training if you're doing it on your own?
I don't know that there's an exact ratio to that. I'm not familiar with that particular data point. What I can say, though, is that if you don't understand how to train, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take because it's never going to be successful. Right. So that's got to be one of the biggest challenges with staffing in anywhere. If you're hiring somebody local to you that's sitting next to you in an office, you still have to be able to educate, communicate, train them, and then that person needs to be able to understand it, execute it, and then be able to teach it to somebody else. So I like to come back to the whole concept of, well, can you even train? Do you even understand how to train? It's one thing to show somebody. It's another thing to make sure that they understand it well enough to teach it. And so I'll give like one more huge tip that we do that's been unbelievable over the past kind of 7 years that we've been using this. And that is, are you familiar with, I'm trying to think, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming?
Yeah.
Cool. So the different types of the way that people consume information. The way that people consume information can be visual, it can be auditory, it can be kinesthetic, it can be auditory digital. If you do not communicate to a person effectively for how they consume content, you will not get through to them. And so a lot of the time, the challenge with hiring anybody anywhere is the fact that you're not communicating effectively based on how they achieve and consume knowledge. We forget that when we communicate, it's our responsibility as the communicator to make sure that the person we are communicating to, that they actually understand what we said. And that is a really, really big deal. And so we have an SOP process in our training on how we make sure that we hit everybody's, style of learning. And we make sure that everybody is accounted for. And there is no reason that somebody doesn't understand unless they just don't have the skill. And we'll find that out really fast.
Mm. If you're looking for an awesome payroll solution, look no further than Gusto. We have used them for years here at Practice of the Practice. They keep me organized, we know how much taxes we're paying, and it's all done right, and you get pay stubs that look like any other company. Head on over to gusto.com/Joe to learn all about their payroll solutions. There is no reason that you should be worrying about payroll. Do it right. Head on over to gusto.com/Joe. That's gusto.com/Joe. Now, I'd love to walk through with a typical private practice where they're obviously going to keep doing counseling. Maybe the owner does less and less, but they may have a group practice where there's other people that either virtually or in person are doing counseling. So there is an adjustment to like a fully VA run business there where it is a service based business. But if you were working with someone to kind of audit their business for opportunities to add virtual assistants, like what would you walk them through to really identify, okay, yeah, you've got these 10 people that are doing individual counseling, but that, like what you said, everything else that doesn't have to be in person is automated with VAs. Like where are people missing opportunities? Where could they have opportunities in having more virtual assistants running the private practice?
Well, the first place that I would start is as an owner, if it's not making you money, you need to stop doing it. And that's a really hard challenge. And so, in private practice, obviously there's some, laws around HIPAA and so forth and all of that. However, you can still have somebody else manage your email inbox as an example. This is one of the biggest things that most people ignore that gives them more time back than they can even imagine. I would love to.
I just want to underline and highlight what you just said. When I did that, when I owned my private practice before I sold it, it was such a game changer where my assistant sent me the 3 or 4 emails a day that I had to respond to that were clinical or something like that. And that everything else she did, like such a game changer. I just want to underline what you just said.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that, I was very, very protective of my inbox. I thought it was mine. Nobody could answer this but me. And when I started to actually inventory what came in on a day-to-day basis, the reality of the stuff that actually hit my inbox, and any one of them, right? Because we all have multiple emails. But the stuff that actually hit my inbox, 9 out of 10 times, probably 90 out of 100 times, it's not that personal. It's nothing client related that nobody could see. There isn't anything, critical. There's almost never money-making opportunities in my email. And I started realizing that the majority of everything that happened inside my inbox was waste. It was just a time suck. And so I knew that if I could just eliminate that and start with the easy one. So one of the ones we started with was a support email address. All of the stuff that comes in that is all identical. It's all the same kind of stuff, right? So we just categorized it. We put it into, folders and labels and all that stuff. And then it was clean. And he goes, okay, that's easy, right? Now nobody touches it except a VA. And then there's, a summary at the end of every day of anything that needs attention. And we put that in Slack, which is our internal communication. Then we moved up a chain and we go, okay, well, then there's this email that Joe uses that, isn't overly complex, but, it's the next step up. And then we moved from there and we moved into my actual inbox and we started having them take over. And so now I don't need to check my email. I have somebody give me basically a synopsis every twice a day, 11 a.m. and then 4 p.m. And anything that's pressing to me that only Joe can touch, I know exactly what it is, and then I can go address it. My team gets pretty good at responding as me, so I don't even have to respond most of the time. But if it's mission critical and it's Joe only, then I go ahead and I can tell them what to say, or I can respond, myself. But I don't have to wake up in the morning and check my email anymore. So if nothing else, the mental space that it'll create in your life can change your business by itself. Just that one thing. And so I always like to have people kind of start there. And then as you walk through your practice, look around. How important is, the person who's helping you with appointments? Or if you're doing it yourself, can you have somebody else set the appointments? If you have a team of people, who's managing all of those appointments? Who's managing your guys' CRM or your marketing tools or anything else? Get into, just walk through your process from, a lead comes in or somebody's interested and the phone rings. And then who's going to make sure that that person gets called back? Because I know for a fact, most people don't call people back timely. They just don't. And, if the goal is to grow a private practice, you need to sign up clients, right? And so, or patients. And if you're not, and you're missing them because you're not responding fast enough, that's a negative to your business. So have somebody at least reach out. It can be via text, it can be via email. They can pick up the phone and they can call because there's tools that allow them to do that. Then you go to the next layer, and it's what happens after an appointment set. What about a reminder? Do you need to collect payment ahead of time? All of this stuff is done by VAs. So we could keep going down the line and we can just keep picking one thing at a time. But just on the front end, before an appointment even happens, everything's being done by VAs for the most part.
So awesome. So I want to think through a lens that a lot of our listeners sometimes don't think about. And that's that they are highly skilled. They know trauma, they know couples, they know kids, something like that. And it almost always stays in that counseling practice. You're a person who has launched businesses, you see opportunities everywhere. So say one of our listeners, we'll just say they're really awesome with couples work. Couples come in, they do marriage couples work, they do long-term, relationships. They're just really good at working with couples. And they're like, I want to start a business that takes that skill, but also is mostly, if not completely, automated through virtual assistants. That's not counseling. Obviously, counseling needs to be under that person's counseling license, all of that. But it takes that skill and turns a business into it. Where do the wheels start going in your head when you hear that scenario?
So, the wheel again. I come back to the exact same place. The only and here's the thing. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know the perfect couples counseling business model, but
Sure.
what I do understand is yes, the one area, the one that a therapist should be doing is the therapy. That is the one area. After that, you want to expand your business? How do you take more off your plate, add more patients, clients, and continue to grow? Well, you're going to need referrals. Does anybody ask for referrals? Does anybody go to past clients or existing clients and ask them to refer friends and family? Anybody that we can help? Is there anybody that you know? Is there, I don't know the practice again. So I'm thinking on the back end, if, there's an opportunity to do notes, and you can sell. And I don't know that this is legal. So again, you can just shoot me and tell me no. But if you can sell your entire package of therapy sessions on the back end, and now you create some sort of an additional revenue opportunity.
Yeah. I think for me, when I think through that, it's okay. The people that aren't ready for counseling, what can we sell them? If they aren't ready to come into counseling yet, is there anything pre-counseling that can help a couple or can help a kid with ADHD? And then it's like you can come into counseling, and then it's like, what can you do after counseling? So when you're a past client, what do you have to offer them? Like, is it an e-course? Is it a podcast? Is it a retreat once a year? All those are opportunities to just level up and to have those clients that just came in for counseling now become like routine, regular clients for you.
Well, I think what's interesting, I was just reading something about this again the other day, is the idea of continuity. And so there's a couple things, that we like to say is that if you are stuck in your business, you don't have a business. The other thing is if you don't have continuity, something that pays you reoccurring revenue for the long run, you can't sell your business. It's really difficult if your clients, the goal, it's kind of funny because one of the businesses I have is an agency in the wedding space. And so the joke that I always have with my clients is like, you can't get rid of us because you have to book weddings every month. You don't get repeat business. Nobody comes back and gets married at your venue the second time.
Right.
So, right. And so with therapy, the goal is that somebody improves and they don't need you. And so you actually, your goal is to actually work yourself out of a client, a patient. And so, yes, I love the idea of pre-count, sessions, post sessions, I think that there's a lot of opportunity, which is why there's now apps that, mental health apps that are continuity based, pay a certain fee and you get to jump on and just chat with somebody for 20 minutes here. There's a bunch of resources, all of these things. What's great about it is you can also have a virtual assistant put them together. If you help them create the content, one of the ways I create content is I just record myself in audio, and then we have it transcribed, which is now done automatically, and then we put it into documents, a PDF, and so forth, and then we either give it away for free as like a lead magnet type thing, or we sell it. And the virtual assistants do everything. The only thing that I do is I have my phone, and I talk into my phone when I'm standing out on our property and I'm walking around and I've got the dogs follow me, and I just talk through whatever's going on in my head. They transcribe it and turn it into some sort of consumable piece of content, and then you can sell that. I think I always think about people who have great ideas and then don't execute on them. And I think in practice, when you have somebody who maybe they're not ready to start working with you, or they've already worked with you, what else can you offer them? Well, there's a million things that run through your head. That little piece of advice that maybe you wish you had said to them while they were a patient, but you thought of it later when somebody else triggered that thought, and you think about how valuable that could be. There's opportunity in all of that. Actually, that just came up with a good idea. What if, as a therapist, you create some sort of a database of all of these tools, tricks, mind shifts, all of these things that that really, really support people. And you almost just create a database, and it's always updated as they come up, and you think about something new and you put that into, you put that into the database and you sell it for super cheap, something super, so that when people think about it, when people, see the bill, they don't even think twice, right? Because they know that, hey, I don't even want to let this go because it's such good information. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've got to get creative, and that I believe that virtual assistants actually help me with my creativity, because I know I can just give them something and they'll create, and then we can test it and find out if there's a money-making opportunity around it.
I know one thing that I often say is that we're so far past the information age. Like, if you want to, you can spend hours figuring just about anything out. But we're in the implementation age. And that's where it's like when you find someone that you enjoy and you get value from, and it's like, okay, Joe is my go-to VA person. I want to just follow his content, and then it speeds up my implementation. Like, that's what people are paying for now. They're not just paying for information. And so, finding, the Joe Sanoks of the world, where you resonate with the podcast, you join one of our membership communities, maybe you do consulting or come to the live events. It's like, you're not going into those Facebook groups where then you get 50 opinions from your one question. Instead, it's like, okay, we got a community of people that think in a very similar way. So it speeds up your progress instead of slows it down.
Well, I think if really taking that approach, what's fascinating about that is the idea. If you look at anybody who's uber successful in business, one of the things I'll talk about is learn from other people's mistakes. Tony Robbins says, knowledge leaves clues. Why would you go make the same mistakes somebody else already made if you could just watch what they've already done, listen to their content, whatever it is, go learn what they already did? And I would say the same thing in this practice space. There is somebody who's done exactly what we are talking about at an extraordinary level. They've got more content. They've got continuity programs. They've got membership areas. They've got apps. They've got everything. Go snag some of the information that they're leaving as breadcrumbs for you to go execute on.
So awesome. I have a couple more questions. I just want to ask, what is it that you do make sure that you hold on to? And so, like you had mentioned, I'll do some of these voice to text kind of things or check in on these things. Are there areas that you think I will not let go of this because of some reason, or is pretty much anything up for grabs?
Now anything's up for grabs. It took kind of a while to get to that point, though. There was plenty that I felt like if I didn't oversee the outcome, it wouldn't get done right. I wouldn't be happy with it. And now I realize that the amount of time that I spent during the process of something being created or whatever, that amount of time that I spent in the middle of the project trying to dictate how things were supposed to go and who needed to do what. If I just let them do it, they would come back and imagine the 80-20 principle. They would come back 80% complete. I'd have to give some reference to the 20%. Then they go fix it. And then we're 100%. We're good to go. And it was that easy.
Awesome.
And so I firmly believe in the 80-20 principle. I believe that in your business, 20% of your effort produces 80% of the results. And if you can allow your team to actually take over more of your business, you would be shocked how little you need to do in order to create the same result or better.
The last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Actually, I like what you said earlier about we're past the information age, we're in the implementation age. So I think if everybody was listening right now, what I would say is be the best at helping somebody implement what you're sharing with them. So whatever it is that your form of therapy is supposed to get them, to an outcome, be the absolute best at ensuring that they implement it. Because at the end of the day, everything that you can tell a person already exists on the internet. You can't sit in a room with somebody or virtually or whatever, and you can't tell them any advice that isn't available online already. Now, you can say it in context, you could say it in timing, you can do all those things. Yes, I firmly understand that. But at the end of the day, there's very few original thoughts, anymore. And so what I would challenge everybody to do is, how can you help somebody implement the advice, put into practice all of the tools and the strategies and the things that you're sharing with them? How can you be better at ensuring implementation than anybody else? And if you're the best at it, then your business will grow just because of that. So that's what I would say.
So awesome. And Joe, if people want to follow your work, if they want to read more, if they want to connect with your virtual assistants, where should we send them?
Yeah, you can send them to joerare.com. Level 9 virtual.com is the virtual assistant services company. And I'm pretty much everywhere, Joe Rare.
So awesome. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I just wrapped up a 2-day intensive here in Traverse City where some of the consulting clients flew in and we spent 2 days together hanging out. We've named that Your Practice Intensive, yourpracticeintensive.com. We bought that, and it's also going to be listed on the website. But in those 2 days, to see these consulting clients really digging in, sprinting, and us talking together, think about what Joe and I just talked about. That implementation so frequently, whether it's with our counseling clients, whether it's with people in Next Level Practice, Practice Boss, any of our membership communities or consulting, sometimes it's just having that accountability to have someone follow up with you and say, how you doing on that? Sometimes it's the emotional side of just saying, you're on the right path. Keep it up. Or I'm hearing other people struggle in that way also. Things that are more the heart side of it than necessarily the information side. And so whether we're doing counseling, whether we're doing consulting or leveling up with membership communities, e-courses, podcasts, all the ways that a lot of you are leveling up, it's oftentimes that unique point of view that you have in the world that is really helping you get to that next level. So we do this show now 3 or 4 times a week. We've had a flood of amazing sponsors coming in. So we have some amazing guests coming up, sponsors. In December, we're going to be interviewing a bunch of 7-figure practices on how they got there, what they're still struggling with. We are going to be opening up that 7-figure practice club. So watch for that in December. And it is towards the end of the year right now. We've got less than 2 months left until wrapping up the year. And now is the time, if you feel confused with payroll, if you're not sure if you did all those taxes right, it is time to have a solid payroll solution. Gusto is that solution. It's what we use with Practice of the Practice. It's what so many other practices use. They help you get all the taxes set up. Head on over to gusto.com/Joe. You're going to get a discount on your first months of signing up with Gusto. And if for some reason you don't see the promo code Joe, you can just make sure your promo code Joe is there, /Joe. have Joe in there somewhere, and you'll get those extra months. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have an amazing day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.